Good morning. Welcome to Solidarity Live. Really excited about today's show. Linda, I don't think you know this, but Jocelyn is not here today because she had another piece of work she had to do. So she called me and she was like sort of apologetic, like I can't make it. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll host. And then she said, thank you. And I'm like, I'm just going to book somebody that'll make you jealous that you weren't also on the show. And so Linda coming on to talk about all things, I don't know, seniors focused now, but it's sort of like just in the discussion of what's going on in this crazy week. So Linda, welcome to Solidarity Live. Yeah, that's my intro.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I've always enjoyed being on with Jocelyn. We have a lot of fun.
I know, but that you always come on as a guest. So now I really feel like you should just be, this is co-hosting. This is Alex and Linda co-hosting the Solidarity Live show. So it should be more fun.
Yeah, I've co-hosted actually with Jocelyn.
That's why she's jealous, probably.
Yep, exactly.
I was jealous, and now we're going to be even. So what should we talk about first in this star-studded sort of arrangement of pretty depressing topics this week?
Yeah, so it's certainly been quite the week, and I think there's really just one topic that's on everyone's minds. How can it not be? Which is the raging, uncontrolled pandemic that still continues to spread across the country, mostly unchecked. Although we do have these medical marvels, miracles, vaccines now, and that's the one thing that does make this January better than last January. So I think we should all, be very grateful to have them and just be talking constantly about how amazing they are. But I think the problem is that the way that things have been managed, there's just not enough conversation about still getting some of the people vaccinated and boosted who aren't yet. I think that there's sort of this attitude of like, oh, if you're not already vaccinated, if you're not already boosted, you're not going to be. And I don't think that that's true at all. I think that there's so many lives that could be saved.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. And the idea that, oh, well, people made their personal choices, and there are some people who made personal choices and whatnot, but to pretend that there's not structural issues for millions of people, especially seniors, people with disabilities, the booster, just the failure of public health communication of who should get what has actually been like stunning. If I were to have graded like how badly could you do, we're below the basement, we're under the building in terms of how to get information about who should do what. And it's not even that difficult, right? That's the part that's annoying. Like you and I can say it quite clearly right now. Like the mRNA vaccine is a miracle of science. It really is. We don't deserve it. It's working so well. Like on Omicron, it doesn't even make scientific that much sense that it's so effective against serious disease and death with Omicron, because Omicron has so many mutations on it. But these mRNAs provoke a really robust immune response, and that's amazing. And that immune response goes down over time, which we explain about the flu as well. We do run into the same difficulties of getting everyone vaccinated for the flu. But you would think with everything shutting down or like self-shutting down or a surge again that people's attitudes on vaccines would change. But if you dig into it, what you're seeing is like attitudes is there, that's there, but structural issues are not addressed, like homebound seniors in California, right? That Ernie in our shop works on. It's not that a homebound senior doesn't want the booster. We're seeing huge percentages of seniors not boosted. We should just sort of stipulate that. Do you have the numbers on that? I know you sent me an email with one percentage, but it's way too high.
Yeah, well, in nursing homes specifically, which is the population that we most want to be boosted, where it's the most important of all, as of the beginning of the year, it was only about 60%. So it might be a little bit higher now, but that's still way too low. Like, it's really just a disgrace that every nursing home resident wasn't boosted by mid November.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one is clearly a policy solution, right? That's a structural one. I don't know if I can land this description of how I think of a lot of things here, but it is. There's like two halves, but almost everything comes down to there's a bunch of people who are like, what do you want us to do? Just like literally go into every nursing home and deliver a booster to every single person in the nursing home? Is that what you want? I mean, and then there's the people who are like, yes, that's literally what we want you to do. And it's not that difficult, right? Like, yeah, it's difficult, but a pandemic is difficulter. It's like, it gets annoying in progressive or public health driven discussions. We just had this with the White House too. Like, we just went through this, like public healthy people looking at data and they're like, oh, we should definitely send high quality masks to everyone in this country. We should send tests to everyone in this country. Like, these bottlenecks are going to get in the way of our public health response. And the establishment, the White House's response was sneering to that when it came up a while ago, right? Like, what do you want us to do? Mail a test to everybody in the country? And they laughed about it. And now, weeks later, they're talking about mailing a test and a high quality mask to people in this country. I don't know why we have to go through that cycle, like where the establishment people and the non-expert have to be wrong for a while before everyone is like, oh, actually, I guess we should just go in and boost every nursing home resident who wants it. We should boost every homebound senior, and that it makes absolute fiscal, economic, and most importantly, moral sense to do so.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. That this administration has continually not just been reactive rather than proactive, but they're reactive, as you said, several weeks late. And that's costing lives, it's overwhelming hospitals, and there's no reason why that needs to be the case. Like, they just announced that they'll be deploying military resources to try to provide some relief to the overwhelmed hospitals, which is a good thing. But why were those same resources not deployed in the fall to boost every nursing home patient? And if they had, then the hospitals wouldn't be overwhelmed right now.
Yeah, although the hospitals might still be overwhelmed, but the supply, I mean, the numbers with Omicron are really are just huge. So I do think that you can say clearly the severe disease and death would be lower. It's like 1-to-1. We know what population is most at risk for severe disease and death, and so you direct proactively the most resources there, and then down from there. That's like the idea that this response shouldn't be driven, right? Like, it shouldn't be like putting resources into the places where they'll do the most good. I don't know. We didn't really like prep talking about this, but did you see any of the right-wing attack on public health driven responses saying that race and ethnicity should play a role in this because they play a role in severity of disease and death? And Fox News and Tucker Carlson, of course, took that up with this, like, with their white nationalist mantle, and are like, like literally hammering away at this. And I don't have like sympathy for the muddled response from the establishment and the White House. It still shocks me how unified the dumb response is, though, right? Like, so it's like you have a late or muddled response from people. Fauci does a good job delivering stuff. He should pick fights with Rand Paul, like, on a regular basis, and he should be like, you have dumb hair, Rand Paul, everybody get boosted, right? Like, so that clip goes viral, because they do a way better job getting information out that way. And on the other side, you have Fox News just seemingly driven to get people to not get vaccinated. I don't understand it at this point. Is Rupert Murdoch like, is he keeping score somehow with how many of his viewers he can kill with misinformation? Or I don't get it.
Yeah,
Any
I'm
insight?
convinced that this is their effort to, as Mitch McConnell would say, make Joe Biden a one-term president by any means necessary. They want to prolong the pandemic to hurt Joe Biden, and they don't care how many people, including their own people, need to die to do it.
Right. Just not themselves, who have vaccine mandates and all of the everything that they can. Omicron, though, the pieces of that are amazing are still the publicly funded mRNA vaccines. And the worst part of everything is just that this vaccine is restricted. I mean, we pretend that this company has the right to say, to restrict it with high prices when the taxpayers paid for the entire development of it. You and I know this. We got fact checked by USA Today for saying that Moderna spent 0% on the vaccine. And then we had to be like, we had to go to USA Today with all the people to tell them like, no, we were correct. USA Today had to issue a correction to their fact check of us. And you're like, maybe you should get people who know what they're talking about to do the fact check in the first place. Moderna spent no money on this mRNA, and now they get to restrict access on it. It's fully ours, the taxpayers. And I really do think it would make a difference. Imagine if it was a publicly funded vaccine, right? If no one was making any money from this vaccine, and we gave the ability to other countries who all have the expertise and capacity to do this. I mean, like our drugs that we buy now are produced in India, the regions and stuff it produced in China, South Africa, incredibly robust structure to do this. We've seen it before with HIV. It was a Brazil, India, South Africa triumvirate coming together that created the generics, basically what we consider the way generics work. So we know that we can do it. And again, the only thing we're up against is that sneering section. And then the GOP death cult, I think. But the sneering section, maybe I'll focus on. And if you can expand on the GOP death cult one, I always turn it into a joke too quickly to be serious about it. I'm like, I think Mitch McConnell prays to the blood god, and he's got an altar set up in his office to that. And I just don't understand the sneering response from establishment Democrats on really obvious things like, oh, what do you want us to do? Literally vaccinate everyone in the world with this vaccine whose effectiveness is amazing and almost unparalleled? And you want us to end the pandemic? Right? I mean, why do we have to get over that sneeringness first?
Yeah.
That's not really a question. You can just keep talking about the however you want to see it. It's what frustrates me the most is every time I see the Biden administration with that first go being sneering at the obvious thing that we need to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that with this artificial scarcity of vaccines worldwide that's created by Big Pharma's greed, that's had so many terrible consequences, including even the muddled booster rollout. I think a part of that was because both some experts and a lot of individuals felt kind of conflicted about, is it right for Americans to get a third shot when so many people around the country around the world haven't had one yet? But that's really like something that never should have existed. There should be enough for everyone without even having to worry about that at all. But at this point, America is awash in vaccine. And so here, scarcity is not the problem. The problem is access and its hesitancy. And just the fact that there's so many people who are brainwashed by Fox News into not taking these life-saving vaccines when there's so many people around the world who are desperate for one. It's just horrifying. And we're seeing this more and more from the Republican Party. It's, as you said, it's a death cult. And not only are they doing everything that they can to convince their followers not to get the COVID vaccine, but this is expanding now to other vaccines. We're seeing Republican state legislatures repealing requirements for school children to have all kinds of essential vaccines. And so not only do they want to spread COVID, but next it's going to be measles, chickenpox, right? Like the GOP is the party of death and disease.
It's not, so there's the two things, like making it a joke, like he prays to the blood god. And then there's the reality, which is worse than the joke, right? It's like, no, they just like power. They see political gain in chaos, right? Like the entire GOP corporate establishment, it's also predicated on people not recognizing the reality that is right in front of their face. I know it's not mine alone, but the ability for them to control people. I mean, like people are drinking piss right now, right? Like that's how stupid it's gotten. Like the CDC has to be like, drinking your piss literally does nothing. Somebody probably won a bet in MAGA funder circles, like if they could get their red hats to actually drink their own urine. It was some sort of bet that they made. The fact that there is this focused propaganda effort is actually just aimed at winning the midterms. So they want to drive everything terrible they want up, and so that everything good goes down. And the metric they're looking at is Joe Biden's approval rating. So they just want chaos. They profit off of chaos. And they don't want things that actually might work, right? So that's why I don't get the idea of the first response of like, what do you want us to do? The hard thing that will actually solve the issue? Like, it seems like it would be a better fight if that's what we were doing, right? Like if we were fighting for actually, some big, robust response to the enormity of the pandemic. And then the Republicans were saying, no, let's do nothing. I don't know if that would change the people who listen to Tucker Carlson all the time. But I do think there are people who would be able to more clearly see which side is the side on the side of disease and death, and which side are on the side of trying to believe in the future. That's what I think it comes down to.
Yeah, I do think we saw a bit of that this week with the Supreme Court's decision to strike down President Biden's vaccine mandate for businesses. And I think, even though that's a terrible decision, it's a deadly one. It does actually set up some of that contrast that you were talking about. And I think that vaccine mandate is one of the best decisions that President Biden has made on the pandemic. And I don't think that this court case changes that, because first of all, it did, before this happened, get some businesses to create new policies, and it got people vaccinated who otherwise wouldn't have been. And even it's a good way to let people save face, right? Because human nature is that once you've made a decision and told people about it, you want to stand by it. And so there's people who would get vaccinated, but they're not doing it because they would just be too embarrassed to change their mind from before, to tell people, you know what, never mind, I decided to do this. But if you can say, actually, my work requires it, so nothing I can do, like, it just lets people save face in a way that's important. But beyond that, I think that having the Supreme Court do this, it really just shows that contrast between President Biden, who's trying to protect people and fight the pandemic, and the Republicans and the Republican-controlled Supreme Court that's undermining him at every turn. And so I would like to see many more bold steps from President Biden, like that mandate.
Yeah, and I couldn't see a good upshot from SCOTUS, so that's a good. I'm happy to hear your take on that, Linda. I'm more pessimistic that people will be able to sort of like differentiate the different actors of who's doing what in this. The Roberts Court is like this decision just makes sense, and because they're a corporate run court, right? I mean, it's literally a SCOTUS who exists to accelerate the looting of our planet by the plutocrats and the transnational corporations. Same. And that's what, because they left in place the medical facility ones, right? I mean, it really, you could see the influence of money saying, actually we need the idea that they overturned is that, we need the people saying we need a safe work environment, and the workers saying we need a safe work environment. And this is the revenge of the bosses who are like, we actually need an unsafe working environment. We kind of want everything to be terrible so that we have a labor pool that we can draw from that'll do anything to, make us money. And I don't know. I agree that the only thing you can do now is like Biden should go for things, not predict what the Supreme Court is going to do, and not pre-censor himself based on this incredibly reactionary court. The only thing to do is to send things to it that are so bold and so popular that the court feels popular pressure to not overturn it, right? I mean, like, people think of the Supreme Court as not, I think this is diminished now, but people somewhat think of the Supreme Court as inviolable, or right, like, oh, it's over here from politics, and it's not at all. It reacts to public sentiment, right? It's actually just individuals on a court with their own politics and ideologies and whatnot. It's been captured by business. But business is responsive to public opinion as well. And so it's just the idea of fight for something as big as Social Security, fight for something as big as Medicare for all, fight for vaccinating the world and ending the pandemic. These are big ideas that we can fight for.
Right. You want to do everything that you can to get these popular policies through executive action, and then dare John Roberts to strike it down if he wants to. And then that's a good way to make the Supreme Court a major issue in the midterms. But I do think that just requires more boldness from this administration that we've seen right now. And in general, I think it's also important to talk about the role that the mainstream media is playing, in addition to, the right-wing media is stoking vaccine hesitancy. But meanwhile, the mainstream media, to a large extent, just isn't that focused on vaccines right now. And I think that that's a problem that's caused largely by the fact that reporters and most people in their social circles, and White House staffers too, for that matter, are all vaccinated and boosted, have been for months. And so that's kind of old news, right, in their brains. But then meanwhile, we have lots of seniors who aren't boosted. And then when they end up in the hospital and the doctor asks them why, they say, well, I didn't know that I was eligible. And they say things like, my doctor called me and told me that it was time to get the first couple of shots, but I didn't get a call about this booster. And I think that that's on the administration and the CDC for the rollout, as well as some state governments. But I also think if there was a lot more discussion in the media, right, places that a lot of people do get their news, like nightly news broadcasts, about just how amazingly effective these vaccines and the booster is against Omicron, then I think we would see more people getting the vaccine, and in particular seniors who need it the most.
Yeah. And then what do you want us to do? Literally go and put ads on every nightly news, right? And you're like, yeah, I mean, at the least you can do. I don't want to take it like too deep into sort of ideological discussion, but it is apparent to me that this sneeringness, this first blush, all of that is actually what it is. It's just neoliberalism. It's literally the first gut instinct of a bunch of elites to be like, the government can't do that. We need to empower the corporations to do that, right? Like, and then wonder why homebound seniors aren't able to sign up for CVS, on their smartphones to get a booster or whatnot. And, that's what this is, because that sneer, they're like, what do you want us to do? Literally have people go door to door with homebound seniors and have it be a government mandated thing so that they have to deliver to all of these people. That's the difference, the push-pull nature of it. And I think that DC is lousy with neoliberals, right? With people who actually look at everything as, oh, this is a public-private partnership. What that means is this is a way that they can make some money, right? This is a money-making venture. And the government, government programs delivering services, they don't make money. And that seeing that as a failure is to me the limiting aspect of how bold our responses can be. That's the thing that we're up against. And it was also entirely predictable because Joe Biden was the most establishment-y of all of the candidates. And so it's not surprising. It's just annoying. It continues to be annoying. You're like, oh, look, you're wrong again. You're wrong again. Business and corporations did not figure it out.
Right. I mean, this is costing lives. The fact that pharmaceutical corporations, instead of the government, have been in charge of most of the vaccine rollout, even including nursing homes, but to everyone. Even personally, as a fairly tech-savvy person with resources, I found it really difficult in December to book a booster appointment for my husband because none of the pharmacies really had slots. They weren't taking walk-ins. And then when we were finally able to do it was when the local county opened up a mass vaccination site where the government just vaccinated everyone. And that was really quick and easy. But that's just not the experience that, people are going to have at pharmacies because they're designed to make money, not to be efficient or to help people.
And a lot of what I see is people want to get back to normal, and that I get it. But the government response has been build things and then turn it off, and then instead of looking and being like, hey, look, it goes like this. It's a wave, so during the time when we can all gather and go outside, we should be doing everything we can to say that there's not going to be another wave, but we should be prepared for if there is. So don't stop your outreach programs, right when the surge is over, which that is what it continues to look like. Omicron, the peak seems to have been come and gone for the East Coast surge, and now it'll move west. But that I can't understand with all the resources, but there's so many things we can talk about that I don't understand, that don't make any sense to me. Like Kirsten Sinema, right? She doesn't make any sense to me, right? How people with a straight face can be like, I will never change the filibuster, the sanctity of the Senate for voting, for voting rights. And you're like, ma'am, you changed it for the debt ceiling literally 2 weeks ago. You all voted for the same exact thing. There is no, right? How people get away with that shamelessness is one of my big questions on this. But things I don't question is that corporations cannot be trusted to solve big problems, because their duty, their raison d'etre is to make money. And so they see the only thing they're really good at is being like, maybe this potentially species-ending catastrophe is actually a great opportunity. Let's take the problem and turn it into an opportunity, right? I can see the pitches. This is why Don't Look Up was so good. They nailed so much of that. But on our Chiron, we have Aduhelm, Omicron, SCOTUS, all sort of weird words. Aduhelm is the sort of a poster child for how incredibly non-trustworthy the corporations are and to what lengths they'll go to corrupt the system. This is a drug. The company is called Biogen. And for years, this drug languished because it doesn't work. It was a molecule but there's reason to see potential for treating Alzheimer's, but it doesn't work. And worse than it not working, it has severe side effects, brain bleeds, severe, potentially catastrophic side effects. And so the scientific panels of independent experts were always at no, this drug should not be approved. So what Aduhelm, what Biogen did, and Biogen is basically like one giant stack of money, all bet on Aduhelm, right? So if you just picture it, it's one giant stack of money, of chips on a roulette wheel, all bet on Aduhelm. And so if they lose on Aduhelm, it's over. So what will they do? They'll spend to their last dollar to corrupt the system. They went into the FDA. Janet Woodcock was the acting FDA administrator. She's the same person who, at the end of the day, the buck stops with her on the Oxycontin. And if anyone hasn't seen Dope Sick, you should watch Dope Sick on Hulu to see the whole story. When they gave this opioid a special label, that's what kicked off the opioid epidemic, the overdose epidemic. And that was just corruption. That was just Purdue Pharmaceutical paying people in a legalized form of corruption, hiring them, promising them lucrative jobs if they get these drugs through the approval process. Same thing. Aduhelm gets approved for use, for wide use. And it's also priced so high that, you know, if you just do the basic math, if everyone who could take it took it and Medicare pays for it all, Medicare basically goes bankrupt unless you raise everyone's premiums by almost a quarter. And so that's where we were just a little bit ago. You know, like pharma, it's not just that they restrict access to needed things through high prices. The other side of them is when they have something that they've bet a bunch of money on that's useless, they'll corrupt the process to get people to take that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Linda, from that the problem statement part, because now this is our good news topic of the day, right?
Yes. So the good news is that this week, first, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, said that Medicare should reconsider the massive premium hike that they were planning to do in order to pay for this drug. And then a few days later, Medicare announced that they are actually not going to cover Aduhelm in most circumstances. And this was the correct decision and what's really necessary to protect beneficiaries, because what we're really talking about here is these pharmaceutical companies look at just people in one of the most desperate circumstances that a person can be in, Alzheimer's patients and their families who are really looking for anything, and they see dollar signs. That's what these pharmaceutical corporations see when they look at these people in one of the most awful situations. They're like, how can we make money off of them?
As much money as possible. Jocelyn and I talk about this facet of the fight that we're in often, which is like our side are generally decent people. And so part of what we have to do is convince decent people of the level of indecency of the sociopaths who do stuff like this, right? And there's just like a natural tendency of decent, nice people to be like, I don't think that a literal sociopath is sitting at the top of these companies being like, how can I maximize profits on the backs of death and destruction? And you're like, no, literally, when they get sued, this is in pharma, you know, it's document after document comes out in these lawsuits. They always happen way later. And it's another part of the story. But the point is, they're documents they knowingly do this, right? They calculate things like, oh, well, once the first lawsuits start rolling in, there's going to be pressure to reduce the price. So we'll reduce the price. In your story, right before Becerra instructed the premium to come down, Biogen had cut the price of Aduhelm in half voluntarily. And so there were people talking to me about like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, it is good, but this is the first thing that pharma does. They're like, well, here's some voluntary things that we'll do. Those have all been priced in. They've already been priced in. So it was really critical. The premiums coming down was a good thing. And then that CMS rejected Aduhelm for wide use, which it lines it up with the VA. The VA had already acted and come to that conclusion previously. The VA is actually quite good at being like, this drug does not provide therapeutic benefit. But pharma, this is a difficult fight. And right away, there's going to be a response from Biogen to keep pushing it. Like all things, this fight isn't over. But it is good to see that, there was this check. And it's important. I know it's a little in the weedsy, but FDA approval happens. And then there's CMS, which is in charge of Medicare, saying, will Medicare actually pay for this? And usually those operate, right on the same page. CMS acted absolutely correctly here, according to what they're supposed to do, protecting beneficiaries. But the rot at the FDA, Janet Woodcock did not get confirmed. And a new person was put forward because of intense opposition by us and so many others, including Senator Joe Manchin, who had legitimate hatred of her from the FDA for the opioid epidemic in West Virginia. But the rot is still there at the FDA, and it's difficult because we're saying oh well, we need public production of these vaccines and things, and I'm arguing with myself, but it's what I hear. People are like, oh yeah, but look, there's corruption from the FDA, doesn't that weaken your case? And you're like, no, it's literally always the corporations breaking the public trust, right? And they have too much money. They have so much money that they can just corrupt any institution. So I'll sort of try to land this back to you, Linda, with saying it's why, all of our statements, some of them I think people might think are non sequiturs sometimes when we talk about how letting Medicare negotiate and lowering these drug prices is a critical aspect of it from so many angles. But if you take the incentive of unlimited profits away from a company, they are not incentivized as strongly to do the terrible things.
Yes, all the incentives are so broken right now, and that includes the incentives for people who work at the FDA. We see so many people who work at the FDA, then they get hired by a pharmaceutical corporation as a highly paid lobbyist, and then maybe they even go back to the FDA again, and on and on and on. And so I think it's looking at who's hired at these agencies in the first place. Pharmaceutical company experience should be a disqualifier, not a credential.
And we're so far away from that right now. I know you know this, but it's like there's an office there at the NIH, the Office of Technology Transfer. It's just fully captured by corporate power. I mean, it's literally the pipeline that takes public stuff like, oh, we invented this molecule. And then through OTT, the Office of Technology Transfer, they give it to a corporation. And it's just a handoff. And you can literally, if you're weird or want to see this in real time, you can find the people's names in Office of Technology Transfer, put a Google alert on their name, and in time, that Google alert will hit when that name is hired to a pharmaceutical corporation. And then you keep that Google alert on. I'm just saying exactly what you said, Linda, but Google alert will go off when they're back in the FDA. It's like, I'm sorry, in Office of Technology Transfer. It's an amazingly above board, and no one thinks they're doing anything wrong. And again, it gets to that sneer. It's like, well, what do you want us to do? Not allow people with corporate experience in the industry that's being regulated to work in the regulatory agencies? You're like, yes, that's exactly right. We want there to be a role that is just based on the public good, not based on the needs of this profit-making entity. And we should align incentives as much as possible to that, which does include things like we can pay bureaucrats more, right? People, the scientists who are making these molecules that are life-changing for potentially globally changing. We should have public incentives for people to actually not work with the pharmaceutical corporations to restrict access. sort of far afield into the technology transfer stuff. But again, it is one of those, what do you want me to do? And then they just state the obvious solution. And it all comes back to what we're up against is Republicans, sort of death culty. It's, you know, it's really difficult to like pretend that that's the party of big business anymore. Like the neoliberal part was always bipartisan. And I think a lot of it is actually held up by elite Democrats now, or the business Democrats are where that sneering voice comes from. You know, it's the ones who work to sabotage the drug price provisions in the House. It's people who literally think that their role as elected official is to that some donors are more important than people, or something like that, right? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, not let the pharmaceutical industry charge as much as they want for drugs?
Right. And what's especially just terrible is that, at least when it comes to members of Congress, we're talking about 5 or 6 people. Like, thanks to all the good work that, you know, we've done alongside many other organizations, and to the united desire of the American people of all parties for drug prices to be lower, for Congress to take on farmer greed, the Democratic Party is actually overwhelmingly united in support of lowering drug prices, except for about 5 people, right? It's 3 assholes in the House and Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema in the Senate.
Yep. And I mean, like, since I've been here for so long doing this exact thing, Pharma Dems as a grouping, when we first beat them, I should look this up before, the number was around 60. It was 60 Dems in the House who were sort of openly pro pharma. But we've made pharma so toxic that, and you know, we don't have to replay this one because it still will just make me angry. It was down to 2 only, right? Scott Peters and Kurt Schrader. But then pharma did their really amazing pharma thing, which was they found Rice, and they corrupted her at the exact right moment to bottle something up in committee and gain an advantage there, which led to severe attack. What happened after that? We had a bill that was already a compromise bill going in, and then what came out after that is they were able to exclude more drugs and hurt people by retaining high prices and help pharma. But it's heartening that it's down to as few as it is, but with the math so slim, with the margin so slim, we're seeing Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, 1 vote in the Senate, and they're shutting down forward momentum on this.
Right. And like, we keep mentioning Manchin, even though he claims to support lowering drug prices, because he's the one who's blocking Build Back Better in the first place. And if we don't pass Build Back Better, then we can't begin to finally reverse the system and start giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. And so whatever Manchin might say, his actions are killing people.
Yeah, and it is important. Like, we're driving our billboard truck around West Virginia still, because he said, and I actually kind of believe him on the drug price one. Like, it's not where he's terrible. But the fact is, you can't say that you believe in Medicare negotiation and lower drug prices and then block the thing that would deliver that, right? That's not a place that we would allow you to be. And actually, I have a question for you. If there's like a few different reads on Sinema and Manchin. One of them is that they each pick, like they get together and they pick, like, well, I'll take Sinema's like, I'll allow capital gains, and right, like they pick which ones they'll allow and then which ones they won't allow, and they're mutually exclusive, right? So something that you can win Sinema's vote on, Manchin comes in and is like, nah, we're not going to do capital gains. Do you think that they actually do that? Because that requires a level of sophistication that I usually don't ascribe to DC.
No, I don't think that they do that. I think, if anything, the corporations maybe sit in a room and agree on which politicians they're going to buy for which issue.
I think
that seems more likely to me. But I also think that for the corporations, it's sort of insurance against maybe some of these people have some degree of principles on some topic, right? Like Sinema is not as terrible as she could be on climate. So that's what they have Joe Manchin for. Manchin at least says some of the right things on drug prices. So that's what they have Kirsten Sinema for. And on taxes too. Manchin is like, oh, well, there's just not enough revenue in this bill, so we should include some of these taxes on the wealthy that I claim to support. But Sinema shoots that down. And so I don't know if they do it on purpose, but certainly in practice, the way that it works out is that their objections kind of cancel each other out and make it impossible to come to an agreement.
It's like chaos, corruption, and stupidity, all an amalgamation of it. And it looks like someone might have a plan, but really, nope, no overriding plan. Always Veep, never House of Cards. But I will also say, like we like being very positive on here. It's difficult in this undifferentiated winter of sort of terribleness to find the positivity that, we can actually solve these problems. But I things that I look at every day and I'm reminded of that. Oh, what do you want me to do? Like the solutions are totally there. And that should give us the hope, right? Like the thing that's keeping us from doing it is not that it's impossible by any means. It's supremely possible. It's just these assholes who are corrupt. And you're like, okay, so I'm switching to climate. And it's like, I don't, scientists don't yell at me, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying this is the solution is why I said that. Oh, what do you want me to do? Plant 1 trillion trees? Just what, 10 billion trees every year? You want us to just plant that many trees? And you're like, yeah. If the alternative is that the planet is destroyed or made inhospitable for humans, then yes, clearly. And it's like the only thing on the other side of those equations is almost always they're like, well, what about these 70 individuals who are wealthy beyond any like imaginable scale? Are you saying that their wealth will need to be diminished? And you're like, yeah, that's the only thing. It's like a world that we can build together that works for the vast majority of people as much as possible. And the only losers are a band of billionaires who, have more money. They're just sending themselves to space one after another because they grew up playing the video game Civilization, anyways, that's one of my things. It always seems bleak, but like when I look into the science of planting trees for carbon, for climate change, I'm like, sure, it would take like a wartime initiative level thing, but like we do that, and we could easily do that to end COVID right now. We could easily do that to do so many things. I think that, it's a joke that I make on social media, but maybe if we start calculating programs and costs as battleships, like maybe that'll help get things across, like we could give everyone healthcare and it only costs 3 battleships or whatnot. And I'll stop talking on this one. My other dream thing is because Trump started Space Force, Biden should start Health Force and make it a branch of the military whose actual purpose is to deliver healthcare to the American people. They'll have uniforms, the whole thing, and just fund Health Force right through the unaccountable military budget and have everyone have healthcare. And I think, maybe you'll even get some Republican votes because you could locate it right next to Space Force.
No, I love that idea. If we had that now, if we had a health force, we would have vaccinated everyone in nursing homes, seniors, and people with disabilities who have mobility challenges months ago. and so many lives would have been saved. Hospitals would be much less overwhelmed. And I mean, it's funny, we actually have the National Guard right now being mobilized to do all these healthcare roles, relieve hospitals, even though that's not supposed to be the primary role of the National Guard. But that should tell us something, that what we need is not more military might or more spending on bombs and aircraft carriers. What we need is to mobilize people around healthcare. And I'll also add what gives me hope right now is these miracle vaccines, how many lives have already been saved, and the potential of this mRNA technology to develop vaccines for so many other terrible diseases. And so I just think humanity is on the cusp of making so much progress on that front, and that what we need to do is just unshackle these vaccines, both the ones that have already been developed and the ones that will be, so that we can actually give them to everyone who needs them all over the world, that there'll be enough of the vaccines and the ability to distribute them.
Absolutely. And public data and a public process, right? The clinical trial process, all public. The pharmaceutical corporations should not control science in any way. And right now they do. It seems radical if you don't know some of the history of this, but I really am just hoping that one of the countries just actually gives up on the multilateral process and just starts producing and just breaks the patent. That actually happens. I think that's what it should happen. The pharmaceutical corporations will never, ever, never, it's an impossibility for them to do the right thing. So if the government is not actually pushing them to do the right thing, and you have all these countries around the world clamoring for mRNA technology, having the expertise to pull it off. I want mRNA technology to be distributed by any means necessary. That's what it took with antiretrovirals for HIV, is countries acting in concert and actually just, saying, okay, America, we're ignoring you because the US was just pushing pharmaceutical corporation policies at the time. So I mean, you and I share this often. The science behind mRNA technology, the research that went into it, the miraculousness of it, right? I mean, it's like that is what should give us hope. That, the way science actually works when it's everybody checking everybody's work, all in looking for the truth and not able to hide things and exclude things that don't lead in the direction of what they want to occur. We need to remove or create a two-track system, let pharmaceutical corporations do their thing on those that aren't, maybe life-sustaining, or we don't have to, but one public pharma track for drugs is completely conceivable. I mean, as the majority of our history, you would have health not being dealt with in the private sector because our lives are not a Snickers bar, right? Like, what is your willingness to pay for a Snickers bar is an okay question for you to ask. Like economists will tell you, but what is your willingness to pay for your life or the life of a loved one is not okay. It's not a market good. So the aberration that we're dealing with of treating people's health and well-being as a market good, there's a strong hint of psychopathy to that, even that we allow it to like flourish as an idea without being like, that's evil, right? Like your concept of withholding people's health and lives for profit is evil.
Yeah, I really think that some amount of psychopathy, that's a job requirement for being a pharmaceutical CEO. You can't do that job if you have a normal level of empathy. It's just not possible.
I think that's exactly right. Linda, what about for our, we're both social security work, so I could give a shout out to our stuff that we're working on right now. But what can we tell people to get involved on these fights and others with Social Security Works?
Yes, so right now we have a billboard truck running in West Virginia calling on Joe Manchin to stop letting pharmaceutical corporations kill and bankrupt West Virginians by voting to pass the Build Back Better Act. So you can see updates on the billboard truck on our social media, Facebook and Twitter, and on our website, socialsecurityworks.org, and sign up for our emails to learn about how you can help with our campaigns to pass Build Back Better into law, to lower drug prices, and to protect and expand Social Security benefits. And then there's also one other thing that I just want to say to viewers, which is, please, if you're not already boosted, get boosted. And if there's anyone in your life who isn't, just do everything that you can to help make that happen for them. Make appointments for people, drive them if you can. It's just so important. The effectiveness of these vaccines against hospitalization and death is incredible. And so we just need to get everyone vaccinated if they're not vaccinated, boosted if they're not boosted, and that's how we're going to get through this.
I agree. And then everyone call your elected representatives and tell them to get rid of intellectual property on anything to do with the pandemic. Our health is not a market good. And Linda, thanks so much for co-hosting this with me. And I'll sign off there. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me.